Question was Pele associated with purification? No, that was not a Hawaiian concept. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. There was a type of ceremony that was done when someone broke a kapu, when someone broke the law. Okay? And they had places of refuge, which were special temples on the different islands. We have one on this island of Kauai, down near the mouth of the Wailua River. And if someone, the legal system in old Hawaii, this is Kamehameha and before, actually he was pretty benevolent, so let's say before Captain Cook, was extremely harsh because they had very few forms of punishment. And the ones they did have all involved death. So just various ways of dying. You broke the law, you died. That's real simple, you know. They didn't have prisons. They didn't have lesser punishments, you know. They didn't cut off an arm or do anything like that. Whoop, kill them. So it was pretty dangerous for anybody who did break one, and you could break one whether you intended to or not, because ignorance of the law was no excuse. Okay? And if you did break one and the executioners came after you, if you could make it to one of these places of refuge that was like sanctuary, and then you went through a ceremony for 3 days, and at the end of that, you were allowed to come out, and no one could harm you for that rule that you broke, you know, for that problem. But it was not a purification, because they didn't think of it that way. If you broke a kapu in the old way of thinking, you put the whole community into danger in its relationship with the gods. Now, for the Hawaiians, that meant the relationship between humans and the natural forces that sustained them. And that was dangerous for everybody. And so, if you made it to a place of refuge, then you went through a ceremony of harmonization, of reharmonizing you with all of the elements, with all the forces of nature, okay? With the gods, as we would say it in English. And then you were in harmony, so when you got out, there was no problem. Okay? They had another type of ceremony that would look to like purification to most of us. This is when on some occasions they would do something that resembled smudging. There was a particular type of plant, and this was only used when there was an ali'i with a lot of mana, usually translated to spiritual power, but it really meant so many rules about what he could do and the effects of his being anywhere that it put everybody in danger. And if he wanted to mingle with the crowd, go to a party, have some fun with the boys, if he had such a high rank and so many restrictions on him that this would endanger not only himself but other people around him. In fact, there were some, if they touched the ground with their foot, the ground all around became so sacred no one else could walk there. Okay? So they had this ceremony using a plant called pukiave, and they would burn it, and with the smoke they would waft it all the way around, and what this did was negate the kapus for about 24 hours. So he could go off, have his fun, come back, and wouldn't hurt anybody. When I say the hurt, some of the chiefs had a kapu where if you walked behind them, you have to be killed. Where if your shadow fell on them, you'd have to be killed. Where if their shadow fell on you, you'd have to be killed. Well, you know, there was just a whole bunch of stuff. Okay? And so what this did was temporarily negate all of that. It wasn't a purification, but it was a smudging type of operation that was done to do that. Okay? They didn't smudge for purification. What they did have, the closest thing that we might call purification, and yet it doesn't carry the same connotation, what they would have pi'ikai. Pi'ikai means to sprinkle salt water. And salt water was used to consecrate a place, to actually put it back into harmony if it was out of harmony. Okay? A lot of people would think of it as purification by sprinkling salt. They didn't think of it as purification. It was harmonization. Okay? They would use a fresh water, P'i, usually, and a blessing, sprinkle as a blessing, which would like reinforce good stuff. And to reharmonize something or harmonize it just in case, okay, for a particular ceremony, where they'd sprinkle the salt water.